Thank you so much for joining, everyone. This is our Indie Agencies Unite webinar series, the second one we've done this year. And the topic is around scaling and using the summer, traditionally a slower season for agencies, to prepare and get ready for an awesome Q4 and a great pitch season. So my name's Anna Garrison. I'm a marketing manager internally here at Goodway Group. I've been here for about 3 years, and I oversee our agency side ABM initiative. So I've got some content to share, and I'm joined by Amy Kraus, our executive vice president at Goodway. She is our fearless leader, doing everything from day-to-day operations to managing client side work. Jen Kaiser, our Vice President of Client Experience, who is really like hands-on with our account directors and our agency clients, helping them be successful. And Megan Fortunato, who is our Director of Client Solutions and Innovation. She is the woman behind all of our pitches, helping our partners make sure that they're bringing their best foot forward. She looks at all of our RFPs. So again, we have a great group here today. Lots of, again, just awesome knowledge to share. So I'll go ahead and kick it off with a brief introduction in terms of Goodway's ABM Playbook and how we've been going to market. So transparently, the reason why we thought this topic was really relevant right now is, Goodway works with over 75 independent agencies, helping to expand their marketing and media capabilities so they can pitch, win, and retain clients and hopefully build bigger business as well. But we realize that this is a tough market, and if agencies don't have pipeline coming in consistently, it's hard for us to partner with you unless you have some of that business coming in. So I first wanted to kick it off with some really transparent, hopefully helpful insights into what my team is doing to help us build pipeline. So you'll see in the chat, my colleague Julie just dropped an Indie Agency ABM Playbook. I won't go through it all because we have a lot more to cover with our panelists, but feel free to take a look at that. It's about 10 pages and it outlines a great ABM strategy that we've been using for the past 3 years, and a couple key considerations that I see indie agencies sort of falling behind in terms of their business growth, especially from a cold outreach perspective. So a couple things I wanted to share from that regard. So a few things that have been working well for Goodway, and again, there's more in that document. But again, we've been using account-based marketing as our strategy of record for the past 3 years. It has definitely been a process. If any agencies who have joined today have used ABM before, you know that it's a long-term approach, and it's not a campaign, it's really a strategy, right? So the first part is making sure you have the right data to understand who your best fit prospects are. So I talk a lot about data hygiene and how to organize your CRM in that document to make sure that you can't make good decisions with bad data. So if your team's not logging activities correctly, things like that, you just don't have accurate information to know which brands will be the best fit for you. Another thing we've done is we have a fantastic sales team here, and we've integrated sales and marketing. Myself, my manager, we meet with sales teams individually once a week, and we're really communicating, here's sales enablement, here's research we've done, here's a case study, and also, what are you focused on this week with our target accounts where you may need support or strategy. So that has really helped us stay on track. And then we've also, I think the final thing, and then I'll start asking some questions to our panelists. I think a lot of agencies and brands can relate to building relationships post-COVID looks different. I think there was a lot of success with cold outreach, emailing, some mass marketing and mass sales before COVID. And then, during COVID, people were, just getting fatigued with that communication, right? So right now we're seeing events being really important. So not only in-person events, but also, like this webinar. We've been hosting more like curated, small group type of events just to get people acquainted with each other, help people network in the industry. So, not so much selling to them, but just, giving valuable information. So that has been great for us. And I'm excited about some of the strategies. If you do have questions about anything in that PDF or what I've just shared, feel free to contact us. At the last page of the PDF is the marketing contact info. So we're happy to answer any additional questions you have. But again, I think we'll cover a lot here too. So um, one trend that we're seeing, not just on the outbound side, but in terms of B2B growth marketing, is that there's less of a focus on the company being marketed and more of a focus on building relationships, networking, and kind of using your leadership as an influencer to build relationships that move forward to an RFP eventually. So I think starting with Amy, like where are you seeing agency leaders sort of do that today, in terms of, agency leaders helping to grow the business, maybe compared to, pre-COVID? And where do you see that maybe shifting in 2026?
It's a great question. I think there's kind of a tagline we use at Goodway, which is growth is a team sport. And I think what we really try to encourage and what I think is a big trend and really effective with independent agencies especially is that agency leaders are no longer like functional leaders focused on maybe delivering great creative or delivering great media or great operations, but they're really responsible not just for that, but also being part of the overall growth engine and growth initiative. I think I actually think you can almost see this if you look at LinkedIn like 5, 10 years ago versus what it is today. You're seeing cross-functional leaders across agency, not just like respond to trends, but actually be part of shaping trends, being very aggressive with POVs, being very outspoken and leveraging LinkedIn and other social avenues to build their network and really create a larger sphere of influence. So I think that's a big trend that we're seeing. And it really does, like you talked about earlier, Anna, it really comes down to building relationships, not just building capabilities. So making sure that leaders across your agency are, really active in things like this, webinars, putting out points of view, very much active in the pitch itself, leading up to the pitch and making sure that, we're getting our stories straight. We're making sure that we're really delivering the value that our clients are asking for. It really, I think in summary, my view is that agency leaders are now being asked to deliver more than they have in the past, because it is so competitive out there. And at the end of the day, there's a lot to be said about establishing those relationships and those relationships being the avenue that ultimately leads to revenue growth.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah, Amy, I think you make great points. And I think that's really a strength for indie agencies is, you care so much about the clients and your leadership is available to like usher in some of those relationships where, again, you just don't get that level of attention or relationship if you're working with, say a huge agency or a holding company. So
Right.
I think that's a great point.
Yep.
Um, Something else we're seeing a lot of as well, again, outside of cold prospecting or lead nurture, is generating new business through search consultants. So I'd love, Megan, for you to share a little bit more about how you found search consultants to be helpful in the process of generating new business. And maybe if you have any advice for agencies, whether they already work with a search consultant or maybe they're just exploring that avenue, like how to make that partnership successful.
Definitely. So we have a lot of new learnings from this year because we've actually started prioritizing search consultants more than ever before, probably in the last 12 or so months. And I will say it is definitely not a turnkey solution to a fire hose worth of RFPs coming through the door, but it has proven to be super helpful and something that I would recommend to a lot of agencies looking to diversify their lead sources a little bit. One of the things I think is most important is the need to identify which search consultants are the best fit for your agency. Similarly to agencies, there are search consultants that specialize in a whole wealth of different worlds within the marketing landscape. So identifying the ones that play mostly in the space or with the size contact or clients that you're looking for is definitely going to be the most helpful. And then also knowing that it's more of a long game. As Amy made note, having having those contact relationships, especially with senior leadership, is going to be key. So helping not only bridge the gap to those consultants, but having those longer touch points with them, finding opportunities to walk them through your new offerings. It's a lot more sophisticated than just uploading your pitch deck to their database. And if you really want to be considered, it requires a lot more touch points and commitment to the relationships in order to make them super valuable. One thing I did find with a lot of the consultants that we talked to, you have to think they get reached out to all the time by every agency possible. And so there's not a ton at first glance when you're looking at a capabilities deck of what is the true differentiator for an agency. So I think what would be most helpful, or what I would recommend for a lot of agencies, is to focus on one or two things that are very different about your agency and make sure that the consultant understands, hey, this is our core competency. An example a consultant used with me when I was chatting with him was we had an agency come in and say, you know what, we are the experts at the suburban Midwest audience. And it was so niche, but when an opportunity came up and that was right up their alley, they came to mind. So instead of trying to prove to consultants that you can do everything, hone in on what makes you unique, and then you'll stand out in their mind when they're coming up with a new opportunity.
So awesome. Thanks, Megan. To Jen, I'd also love a little bit of perspective. So, of course, it's great to, get new opportunities, get new RFPs, new clients in the door. But there's also a really important piece of, retaining and growing your existing clients.
Yeah.
So for Jen, I'd love to know a little bit more about the strategies you found most effective in doing that, especially, yes, with existing brands, and if there are areas where you think, again, especially during the slow season, like during the summer, how agencies can be proactive in, looking toward, the future. Obviously, 2026 isn't that far away, and how agencies can, be consultative in that way.
Yeah, I love a little summer slump because it really gives you time to like get out of the day to day, think broader, bigger picture. So I think when it comes to 2026, it's all about what is the roadmap going to look like for next year? How can we get in front of it? So what sort of goals do your clients want to achieve in the next year, and how we might need to pivot the strategy or the data or the audiences, and what we can do now to prepare for that. So I think that those are really great things to start doing. And then I also think it's just like those proactive, interesting ideas. So repitching things you've already discussed, maybe 2 years ago, maybe to a different set of audience because the team has changed. Doing audits, this is a great time to like not only do some hygiene, but to find some new things that might surprise and delight your client. Data workshops. So this is kind of like a scary thing that might take more time to execute and to evolve, but also sometimes people don't want to have these discussions. So when you're like, hey, we got some time in the next month, don't put it off now. Let's talk about data and where you want to go and what the crawl, walk, run is. And I think it's really about asking clients what's going to be valuable to them in the future. And I think having some of these kind of conversations, this is what we're hearing from other indie agencies. This is what we're hearing from other clients like your size or like you. Have you started to think about that? And like, this is a pretty obvious one, but like, go have some fun, have like fun conversations. Take your take your clients out for lunch. The summer slump is a perfect time to build those relationships. So it's not just about, talking about work and putting another meeting on the calendar, but maybe going to a baseball game or maybe just picking up the phone and calling like somebody you really just like to talk to because it's like nice to talk to them. This is a really good time to do that as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. Again, I think that's such a great point. I think moving into the next section, it's important for us to also share, given that we work with over 75 agencies and, we talk to hundreds of agencies every year. So we, as Goodway Group, get a lot of information in terms of, what's going on in the market, what are we hearing brands want from agency partners? And obviously, that's always evolving, right? There are always trends, you see all of the, various news outlets. But I think this group in particular has a lot of great insight there. So I think, starting with Megan, because you do sit on dozens of pitches every year, are planning pitches, working with the search consultants and, receiving all of the RFPs. Um, are there capabilities or qualities in an agency that you think brands are really looking for today in an agency partner? Do you feel like it's different than a few years ago?
For sure. I actually think a lot of, like most things in our industry, the pendulum can swing pretty heavily, and it has a little bit in the last 5 years in terms of what is the top priority for a lot of marketers. It's not surprising that given the economy, we hear all the time they're being asked to do more with less, whether that's staff or budgets or whatnot. But I think I've seen a pretty big shift from a focus on more of those specialized vendors that answer a key ask, but not necessarily a wide scope of an ask, versus a lot of our clients are looking for a more integrated solution, which can give, I know some indie agencies a little bit of the hives, like, uh-oh, there's, a wide range of capabilities that these folks are looking for. But what I'm seeing is it's not necessarily that an agency has to have every capability that's being asked for in a scope of work, but they have to have proven partnerships that will help deliver against a scope that will be easy for the client to manage or not have to manage at all. So, for example, if you're going into a pitch and the ask includes something like influencer, which we know is so niche and is really left a lot of times to the experts that are so good at that avenue. It's having an existing rapport with an agency, an influencer partner, and coming to a client with an integrated solution and proven points of how you've delivered with this agency, this vendor in the past, to deliver for a client that makes it seamless from their perspective, but gives them the best benefits of both the experts in that specific channel and the core competencies that you as an agency bring to the table. So definitely something we're seeing more of, as opposed to marketers being able to field 10 different specialized vendors. But I think it's not necessarily as scary as it originally sounds. I think there's just there's an opportunity for us as indie agencies to bridge more partnerships with more specific vendors and bring more folks to the table that will only help deliver better outcomes for our clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Megan, I think that's a great point. And, I was talking with an agency last week and, we were just kind of agreeing that, every channel, every full service capability an agency has these days, there's so much more depth to it, even than there was like 5 years ago. So, you take media, for example, again, it's just, there's so much detail that, you need to know, I think, to compete on a lot of these RFPs coming through the door. So I think having partnerships where, again, whether it's influencer or media or, media in general or um, some other channel where another agency is an expert, I do think that can really like bolster your current offering with, again, not taking away from your existing, full service, like pitch that you have. So I think that's a great point. And then Amy, I'd love to hear from you as well, because you also sit on tons of pitches. Um, I think there's a big pain point in the industry right now for indie agencies about how to just stay competitive in general. And I know we, talked a little bit about that in Megan's last answer, but do you have any additional strategy or advice in terms of like how agencies can refine their direction or make sure they're kind of heading in a good strategic direction for 2026?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to loop back something Megan said earlier that kind of made me chuckle. You use that example about, what was it, like a suburban, an agency that somebody needed a
Yes,
specialization
suburban
in
Midwest. Yes.
urban Midwest. I never thought that would be something I would hear around specialization. But I think really what brands are looking for, and what I always hear was well received, was really nailing the strategy, having a deep understanding of like the consumer insights, the audiences that we're trying to reach, the messages that we're trying to convey. And so I think just another way to stay competitive, I agree with what Megan, you were just talking about. Like, I think brands evaluate the fit less and less on, did you check all the boxes? Do you have all the capabilities that I'm looking for? I do think brands are starting to acknowledge that it might be okay that not one single agency has everything under one roof, as long as you can bring best in class together and align that under a really strong strategy and a really strong POV and a differentiated POV. And so I think that's what brands are looking for, and I think that's one of the ways that indie agencies can really stay competitive and be indistinguishable. At the end of the day, like, we can all say we're doing the same thing, but there has to be something there, a real hook, that gets brands excited about choosing an agency to work with. Just a couple other notes on what we hear brands really looking for now. Speed to value. I mean, everyone wants to move so fast. The industry is moving so fast. AI is moving faster than all of us. And so making sure that you have a plan for how to respond to the constantly changing needs of your brands and how to leverage the latest and greatest tools, I think, is another way that agencies can stay competitive. Flexibility without chaos is another one. Again, like, think about the tariffs and some of the other like macro trends that are upon us right now, making sure that you have a system within your agency to be able to flex and pivot and not make your clients feel that chaos that maybe you're feeling internally, but even better if you're not. And of course, cultural alignment is always, at the end of the day, I think pitches can be won and lost on chemistry. And so I think, again, this kind of goes back to our earlier point about leadership being engaged in the whole, like, growth mindset and the growth endeavors. That's really important to get right. And sometimes I think when teams are really in it and they're in the weeds and getting ready for a pitch, having those leaders able to zoom out and really think about, like, how do we build this connection and build this relationship in these very early stages? You can't underestimate the value in that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think going off of that too, Jen, I'd love to hear from you kind of around the same topic, but especially because you're, working with our agency partners in the day to day, are there different demands you're hearing from their brand clients? How are the agencies rising to meet those demands, whether it is, through partnership with Goodway or just the agencies themselves?
Yeah, not surprising. Very similar to what Megan and Amy said. Really, I feel like agencies and brands are looking for a one-stop shop. So just in the while they would like a niche, I think that there's so many demands on them right now. They're looking for like somebody to make it easy, help them, hold their hand, and they also want them to like know a little bit about everything. So even if we're scoped for this one thing, can you do this other thing? Do you know how to do that? So they really are looking for somebody to help them like centralize everything. So just in the last month, I think I worked with like a digital and traditional RFI, multi-location and national performance and awareness. So that's great because we can see a broader view into a marketing campaign, which helps us with goals and understanding the picture holistically. I think doing more with less, what you're willing to compromise on, what you're willing to give away. So it's not just always about pushing back, but it's also about like, how do we give and take here? We'd love to say that it's about prioritization, but some days it's just like, what's the path of least resistance? Let's talk about what we need today to get to tomorrow. So that's in doing more with less. And also that's those speed to market conversations, and those just like aren't stopping. And then one thing that I don't think was touched on is really the power of data and analytics. I think more and more that like marketing to the business to marketing to media outcomes are so important. And so we're getting more and more questions about, okay, we know the insights here. We know how much we're getting for our media dollar, but what's if we had one more dollar, what should we do with them? Are we investing in our channel mix correctly? Are we looking at how much should we spend? Like just some of those like bigger pictures about items about data. And so that's really exciting. I come from a performance marketing background, and I think that that's really what we need to stay relevant and to prove our value and to make sure we're proving our worth. So those are just some of the other conversations that I'm hearing. More and more pressure about data and the actual investment.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jen. And I think the last question I have in this section is kind of a turnaround. Megan, are there like red flags or things we've seen that maybe agencies have done that have disqualified them like early on in the RFP process? Are there any recommendations you have for for avoiding these, or,
Yeah.
just common missteps?
There are. And I know, most folks on the call probably know the very obvious ones. As Amy mentioned, chemistry is key, right? Agencies are hiring who they want to work with. Having bad chemistry, even amongst your team on the call, can be a huge sign, red flag to a client that is like, ooh, if they can't get buttoned up here, how are they going to be buttoned up for us? So definitely something to keep in mind. And a couple others that are very relevant right now. There's a lot of reliance on proprietary tech, which can be good if shown in action. But right now, I think there's a big misconception that showing your logos or showing your proprietary products is enough in itself. And truly, it starts to become a little bit of logo soup for clients who are seeing deck after deck of these proprietary logos without an understanding of what real value they bring to the client's business. So I have heard from clients that it's super important to show those in action or show them why should I care about this? What is it going to do to help drive success for my business? So that you don't lose clients with confusion or particularly lean too heavily on that without relating it more specifically to their business. And then, of course, we're in an age where we have to be custom with what we're presenting to clients. We really can't rest on templatized, even vertical specific materials. It has to really be an experience for the client where you've immersed yourself in their business. I think they can find out real quick if you know your stuff or if you read a wiki article the day before. So definitely an area of opportunity for our agencies to avoid. Just hopefully it's common sense, but there's a lot of times where you'd be surprised how many agencies fall out just from lack of preparation there.
Can I just add a comment to that? I just can't
Yeah,
resist.
of course, Amy, go ahead.
I was going to say, I bet the audience and us included have been on, we've read hundreds of RFPs, and I think we can all agree that it's a little cringy when you get a question that is asking you to describe or show you a process for something. And so I would just add that, to the extent you can avoid showing a process and instead showing the work output, and you can talk through the process. At the end of the day, no, I don't think anyone has ever been blown away by a process in a new business pitch. And if we could just like as an industry remove that question from every RFP from this point forward, I think we'd all be standing up clapping right now. But so that's just another thing that I think we've learned is show the work, show the actual what you will do, not how you will do it.
Yeah, and something I will add, even from the new business side, like before you even get the RFP, I think there's an important point to make there on like knowing the brand you're going to meet with really well before you meet with them. I think we see all the time, like salespeople who, kind of go into a discovery meeting and are asking, oh, like, so what do you do? Like, what markets do you work in? Where are you located? Some of those like basic questions. And I think for me, like we really see like, you really need to come in prepared to have a great meeting, know what they do, be able to answer their questions around their business. And again, show your process in the questions that they're asking you and not have it, don't send them like your sheet of, hey, here are the questions we need from you, in order to answer this RFP. So definitely, I think twofold, once you are approaching, new business and building the relationship, and also when you are, getting the RFP started. But yeah, the final section we have, and then we'll move into Q&A. So just a reminder, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box and we'll answer them toward the end. But I'd like to talk a little bit about capability building for successful pitches. So, I think Amy, from your perspective being, our fearless leader, how do you see agencies prioritizing either, you can build, in-house, partner, some of the full service capabilities that I think, Megan and Jen have really talked about agencies needing to be competitive.
Yeah, thanks. I had to take myself off mute there. I love this question because this is a passion point for me. I think that the first thing, and maybe it sounds a little obvious, but sometimes it's hard to do, is to really assess your strengths as an agency. What are you really, really good at? Not what do you really want to be good at, because those are two different things. And I think it takes a lot of rigor And sometimes you have to acknowledge things that you don't really want to, especially in leadership, if there's certain areas, certain capabilities that you're not really crushing it at, or you're not up to par based on the competition. So I think that's step one, is really recognizing where are you really strong? Where do you have the right to win? And then what are those capabilities? Even if you're planning, maybe you have a roadmap that you are going to build them in-house, maybe you're just not there yet. So I think that's kind of an obvious step one, but I think it's kind of hard to do, especially if you have aspirations to really become a true full service agency. I think the second point there is, if there are capabilities that you're not necessarily ready to own in full. I mean, looking at the capabilities that are maybe more specialized and harder to hire for, and maybe Jen touched on it earlier, data and analytics. We work with agencies that have really strong media practices and really strong strategy, but analytics maybe isn't quite there yet, because we all understand how complex of a space that is and how hard it is to find great talent. So, if there's highly specialized areas, commerce is another one that's still, in development for a lot of agencies, making sure that you kind of identify those early on and find the right partners to support. I was having a conversation not too long ago. I don't know, it might have been with you, Anna, or Megan, but we were talking about just going through like a renovation of your house. And I went through this a few years ago. There was never an expectation that my general contractor was going to do everything himself, right? Or his little team. He has to sub out for different, whether it's plumbing or carpentry, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, as the customer, all I cared about was that everything was perfect and, up to snuff and met my expectations. I didn't really care who was coming into the rooms. So I think that's kind of the mindset that indie agencies need to take, because it is so difficult to do everything really, really well. And then obviously find the right partner. I mean, Goodway is obviously one, but there's a lot out there. And do your homework. Make sure you vet. Make sure you culture again. It's not just between brands, but that's ultimately a really important thing between partnerships too, to make sure that you're kind of coming at the work from the same mindset and the same approach. That usually is really important to making the relationship work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, we've heard from a couple really smart people at other agencies, like who doesn't use subcontractors in other industries, right? Like, why is it taboo for agencies to use subcontractors? So I think it's such a good point. And Jen, I think this is a kind of a broad question, but I'd love your perspective. Obviously, like Megan shared, whether it's proprietary tech or resources you have, or it's, partnerships you have, a lot of agencies I see are sharing logos on their website. I think that's great, but obviously some are superior to others in terms of, again, being competitive in the market. So do you have any notes on like platform access tools or tech that you think are really helping indie agencies stand out, whether they're our, current agency partners or just ones you're seeing in the market overall?
Yeah, I think I think Amy touched on this, like, it's kind of like you could have it, but if you're not using it and if you're not using it correctly, does it really matter? So again, I see a lot of people who have a lot of interesting tools and tech, but they're not using it well. And so they need a partner to help them. I really look at it kind of as a crawl, walk, run, like where are you in the landscape and what are you going to really use and what do you think is worth the investment and what is your team really going to learn how to use and apply and find valuable. So when I think of like tools and tech and a crawl, walk, run, I think of like crawl should be just like great dashboards and data visualization. You can go very far with just those types of things. And a walk, I see it more as like maybe a first run of a MMM or a scenario planner, or using something from Goodway like a Passport One if you don't have your own audiences in CRM to target. And then from a run, it's really more of like AI and where is that going? And how can you not just use like Chat GPT to like write an email, but how can you use that for complex ideation and automation and data synthesizing, and just like getting faster and smarter. So I think that there's lots of different tech and tool, but I think it's really just what, like, similar to what Amy said, like finding out, understanding what your priorities are and finding the right tool that you're really going to use, and your clients will all see value from.
Yeah, I think, Mike Walk on our team wrote a great LinkedIn article a couple months ago, kind of on that topic actually of, if your, tech and tools platforms are, a car, you want to make sure you have a really good driver to race that car, but you also
Right.
need a really good car. So it's, it's that balance, right? Of, having a great in-house team, given the fact that, sometimes one in-house team may get totally different results using
Yeah.
the same tech just based on experience or, other factors. So I think that's, again, really, really important. Um, I think, Megan, we also do a lot of work, and me sitting on the internal marketing team, we do a lot of work to support you in terms of, the creative um behind our pitches, or just how we present our strategies. So do you have any notes on like what is working these days, or kind of ways that we've changed up how we're actually presenting the ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So Amy nodded to this earlier when she was saying, show the actual work for showing the process. But I think it goes even a step further. I think when we think about marketers changing agencies, it's risky to them, right? There's this concern of like, is my performance going to drop? Am I going to get what I needed? And they're looking for proof points before they move forward. So I think a couple years ago, or I know I was very guilty of it, we would throw a couple case studies in the back of a deck and have that check the box as sure, we have proven experience in this field. But now I'm seeing a lot more success in truly bringing the case studies, relevant case studies. We have to make sure that it truly answers the client's needs, up to the front, and having a discussion kind of woven through about proof points of how you've been successful against this audience, or what you've seen success or not, or learnings about what it hasn't worked in the past on certain channels when you get into talking about media planning. I think they look to us as having expertise both of of learning what has worked and what hasn't worked, as well as being able to prove that you've driven success, because it can only make them more confident before what feels like a very risky move on their part.
Mhm. Completely agree. And Megan does a great job of that too, by the way. So thank you, Megan, for all the hard work you do for us. The last question in this section, and I think is just kind of exciting. I think it's a great topic. Is around co-pitching. So we do find sometimes that agencies want to take on an RFP where they don't maybe feel they have all of those pieces as core competencies. And so we will, co-pitch with agencies on business. And, in some cases, it's been really successful. So, Jen, I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about that, maybe what that's looked like,
Yeah.
if there have been any like, again, ideas you have in terms of how to make that successful.
Well, I hate to repeat, but I can't agree more with what Amy and Megan said. I think with co-pitching, it's really all about the case study. It's about proving that we've done this before. So Goodway has great experience in healthcare and tourism and multi-location, but saying it isn't enough. And so it's really about how we've driven success, what we've done for our partners, and showing how we've innovated and like really held people's hands as we've like grown with them. So a lot of the pitches that are the co-pitches that I've done recently has been about that. Like usually an agency doesn't have that category expertise, and we come in and we help them and really show them what we've done and bring some of that credibility. And then I also think it's just a lot of the co-pitches are usually like, hey, you've already done this so well with one of our other clients or one of our other brands. So how can we use this great idea that we've already done and like show it somewhere else? So it's really helpful when we already have a planning tool or a custom dashboard to help like give insights, and then they have confidence in us and we can instill that confidence and show it to another brand and pass that along. But that's usually how the co-pitches have been recently. It's not really a one size fits all. It's like there's so many gaps to fill, and it's just making sure that we are like the credible experts that can come and help them and help them with that space. And whether that's just like giving them talking points, helping them with a case study, or really like coming with them to the boardroom and having those discussions. It's really, we're really good about flexing up and down to whatever an agency needs or whatever that brand is looking for.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks, Jen. And I think we can all relate to that sort of nerve-wracking feeling of whether you're going into a client meeting or a pitch, and again, maybe you have a varying level of confidence in what you're pitching or your experience in, like you said, a certain like market or vertical. So, I know for me, like if I was, back in, an indie agency like I've been in the past, I think having a partner like Goodway or, someone else would have definitely made me feel a lot more confident, maybe would have made my heart rate go down a little bit. So that's something I appreciate, right? Is like the mental, physical health of all of our agency partners in a kind of a high stress industry.
That's a really good point, Anna. And sometimes we're not even in the pitch and we just are like, hey, we'll take a look at it and see where you are just to give a little bit of boost of confidence or some sort of some recommendations if an agency needs that.
For sure. Well, thank you all. We'll go into the Q&A, and it looks like we do have a couple questions. Again, reminder, feel free to put questions in the Q&A box here. The first one here, how do you prospect brands or companies that have a large internal marketing team? What is the messaging on how you speak to them? So I can go ahead and answer this one. And I'm happy whoever sent in this question, I mean, feel free to connect with me. But really a best practice for B2B growth would be like multi-threading, like profiling the buying system. So, use various tools you have, whether it's Zoom Info or like LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a great option, and really make sure you understand everyone in that buying group. Today on average, there could be like 10 to 15 buying committee members in any given decision just to get you into the door. And all of those people care about different things. So, like, if someone is contacting, I don't know, a vice president of, brand marketing versus a VP of demand gen versus, something else, they all care about different things. So, something I note in the PDF we dropped earlier, is that it's very important to personalize your message. Make it real. Personalize it to the audience in terms of their job title, maybe where they live, if you have anything in common. Something that's been helpful to us is actually LinkedIn has a team link functionality where you can see within your agency if there's anybody else connected to people at that for us it's agencies, but it could be, at that brand for you. So making sure that you're leveraging that too. But yes, again, happy to talk through that a little bit more one-on-one. The next question is, Chuck, where's a good place to start in getting more RFPs? I'll kind of open this up to the group, whoever maybe wants to start there. I don't know, Megan, if you have perspective, or Amy.
Yeah, I think it's the burning question, right? So I think that's what we're all after. Like we said, we have had some success with search consultants. It has not been a waterfall of RFPs all at once, but it definitely is a great start. We tend to get a lot of our RFPs through referrals of great client work, and then also our BD team as well. So there's a lot of different opportunities. Our marketing team also puts out a lot of thought leadership content that helps get recognized when brands are searching for things that are relevant to their business. So it's multifaceted. I wish I could say there's like the one easy answer. And I know we did have a question in there too, like, is there a concise list of all search consultants? And there's truly not. And I wish there was. What we've found the most success in is kind of doing some research on LinkedIn to understand who's talking about topics that are within our ICP. And they typically have led us back to some webinars from search consultants themselves, or even some postings for RFPs. I will add a little bit of hesitation around, I think we've all seen on LinkedIn when someone posts an RFP and you see about 300 people raise their hand of, please send it to me. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that as something to lean on for RFP generation, but it does start to get your thoughts flowing about the type of RFPs that are out there and who is sending them out, because that might be a person that is a key contact in the search consultant world.
For sure. And some of those people who post RFPs on LinkedIn, they're literally pitching the same type of process that we're literally sharing today, or like in this PDF I'm sharing. So again, if you have questions, let me know. We're an open book. We want indie agencies to come together and win new business. It's something we're very passionate about in terms of Goodway's, like mission and values. So, if you have questions on account-based marketing, again, please feel free to let us know. We're happy to help support you in that. It looks like we have a couple of additional questions. So yeah, I think Megan, you answered around, is there a comprehensive list of search consultants? The next question, and here I'll scroll down to the bottom. My firm has a knowledgeable and very experienced team to offer clients. Are you observing any bias against an older but wiser team who fills the bill in terms of more comprehensive knowledge?
I have not seen a lot of bias there, but Amy, anything you guys are seeing on your end?
No. I mean, I think clients are really looking for the best ideas, the most innovative ideas, the most strategic ideas. And however that comes to life and whomever is behind that, I have not seen a bias. It's more about the work and less about the individuals who are actually behind the ideation.
And to add to that, something that is really simple is just responding, like not being an expert and also having like a timely response and having that chemistry as well. They're just like, there's like a broad range, and we've heard from some of our other clients or some of the clients that we're pitching with is like, we are just having a hard time from our current agency getting a response. So like sometimes it's just something as simple as that as well.
Mhm. And I think from my experience too, the agencies I've been a part of tend to have a really young team, which so I think there's a balance, right? Like if the play is you have a lot of, vertical expertise in a certain area or something where having a more experienced senior team is helpful, like maybe that is a good play. Versus like, oh my gosh, your team is so young and fresh out of college. I think there's a balance, right, of leveraging some of the like fresh, innovative ideas with that industry experience too. Um, Another question, any tips for getting my leadership team active and good at LinkedIn? This is actually funny because this is something we talk about all the time. I just met with Amy
Love
and
this
Jen
question.
about this pretty recently, and I think from my perspective, number one is, if you have an internal marketing team or again, someone on your client-facing team who does social media, even part-time, just have them briefly audit your leadership team's LinkedIn's, try to get them, to look branded, and then have someone kind of project manage those relationships of saying like, hey Amy, like once a quarter we're doing a thought leadership post or a piece of content, or hey Jen, like what are you passionate about in our agency's niche, and how can you create perspectives around that. I think something that's good too is obviously, again, like Jen and Amy are great examples. They have a big network. How can they leverage their network? So like even if you have again a target account list of brands you're looking to pitch, there may be a better play for someone like Jen or Amy to reach out instead of a salesperson. I think people these days are a little bit weary of like another account executive is reaching out to me to connect on LinkedIn, versus someone who is, at the buying committee members like same job, like title level. So that's what I would recommend as a first like start.
Yeah, I love that. There is that is a reason that's an active conversation. And I think, I don't want to make any assumptions about your leadership team's responsibilities and what you're asking of them, but we started the webinar on this topic. It really is all hands on deck when it comes to growth. And so I think also just like reestablishing the expectations around leadership within your agency, that it is a growth as a team sport. We are all members of business development, even if that's not in our title. And part of that is being visible in the space and being somebody who has a point of view or a voice, especially if you have a big network. So it's just like the importance can't be underemphasized.
For sure. And we've got time for a couple more questions, so we'll keep going. We've got a great discussion going, so thank you to everyone who's asking questions. Another one, what do you see as the best channels to gain visibility among decision makers for partnerships with media agencies? Is it really just LinkedIn? Thought leadership coming from potential partners to help familiarize? I think that's a great question. And again, something that myself and the members of our marketing team are looking at all the time. We do use LinkedIn a lot, but something that is kind of a pain point with LinkedIn, as many of us know, is that it's hard to scale. Account-based marketing isn't this like spray and pray type of approach. It's okay, you've got brands that you think are a really good fit for you, and they'll always be a good fit for these like key reasons. Um, and so you may only have like 100 or 200 brands you're targeting at a time. So like for LinkedIn, the minimum audience size I think is 300 people. So you've got a couple different job titles you're targeting, maybe 100 to 200 brands. So again, you can't spend that much, and the results, like it takes a while to even get results because of the limiting audience size. Versus like a platform like Reddit actually has become more popular for B2B ABM advertising. However, you have to have a much larger audience. So again, there are a couple different things you can look up for the person who asked this question. Dive a little bit more into like ABM from a tier 3 versus tier 2 versus tier 1 perspective. Maybe LinkedIn is good for your like tier 1, like really important accounts, versus you can spend more budget and open up your audience to like an ideal client profile that's a little bit bigger, and use Reddit, for example. So there are ways to do it. It just depends a lot on your audience size and your budget, honestly. Um, awesome. So a couple more here. I think, Megan, for you, sometimes we'll present a pitch and think it's great work, but then we'll lose it and not get feedback on why we lost it or where we could improve. Do you have any recommendations for how to approach that for future pitches?
Oh, it is. I think we can all agree that is the worst feeling in the world when when you lose, but B, when someone goes silent and provides no feedback. So my biggest ask is that if anyone on the call eventually makes it on the brand side or ends up that way, you keep that feeling in mind, because I think it's professional to provide feedback even when it's difficult, right? So my first gut would be to say try every method possible to get in contact with that person. It may not be something that they can devote 30 minutes to right when it happens, although ideal. But continue to try to push, whether it's over email or whether it's trying to get on a quick call just to discuss, hey, what can we do better on the next one? Usually clients are fairly receptive, but it does happen where they do not. I think another avenue, which you have to kind of follow your company's guidelines on a little bit, but I think there's value in forming relationships in the industry for what I like to call like independent eyes, to get the take of someone else. Maybe it's a past client, or maybe it is a consultant that you've built a rapport with, of this is what we presented. Here was kind of the brief. What do you think we're missing? And honestly, doing that before presenting is even more beneficial. But if you need to get some added feedback to know what you can do better, that's another avenue you could explore.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna take two more questions and then wrap up. So this one, I think for Jen. So our team's very comfortable with presenting tactics to our clients, but less comfortable consulting them on new ideas or strategies. It's an important shift to expand existing client business. What are we doing internally to help get our client teams thinking, forward and being consultative?
Yeah, so I think that this is a great question, because I find that like my teams love to get out of the day to day and think about things other than like their tasks and like their daily, weekly, monthly checklists. So really, I usually start by saying like, what are some cool things that we haven't thought about or we haven't told our client yet, and how can we make that something that they find valuable? I also think like rewarding your teams for thinking outside the box is also very important, and understanding that it's not just the day to day, and usually they're very, very responsive to that. And then I think there is also something with like when you talk to the client and you show these new things, it actually like being actionable, and like it's also received well by the client. So sometimes I feel like we go we think outside the box, we show something and then it doesn't go anywhere. So one, training your team to say like, well, for every one big idea, or, you know, for every 10 big ideas, maybe only one is going to get through to the client or gain traction or be actionable. But making sure that they know that the clients really like that and value that anyway. So I think it's really just about making sure that it's just a part of like the overall process and getting people excited about it. And once you have your teams do that, they'll continue to repeat the process and be rewarded for it.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and take one more question, and it goes back to one that I think was previously asked about. Someone's asking about how to make connections with other agencies to explore best ways to partner together, or how to reach the brands themselves. I have a couple thoughts, but is there, like, for the group, does anyone have any initial comments there?
The one thing I would throw out is I think sometimes when we view attending events, even with our BD folks, obviously the main focus is really business development, right? They're focused on talking to key clients or forming relationships. But I feel like a lot of times conferences are a great opportunity to network with peers as well, and that could be an opportunity to do some research ahead of time if you know, hey, this is an area we are not strong in. We're predicting some pitches coming down the line in this field. Let me try to make sure I'm talking to a few folks at this conference that are probably more than willing to talk about their services, right? All these things. So definitely an opportunity there. But Anna, I'm sure you're a lot closer to this than I am.
Yeah, I think you'd be surprised at even like whether they're agencies in your region or like in your state. I think Goodway has had more success lately taking a little bit more of a like local to regional approach in terms of networking even. I think that is great. And again, I think you'd be surprised. There are some fantastic agencies that that we also will partner with, to try and again just bounce ideas off them, or again maybe there's a pitch that requires additional things that are our agency client, and we maybe again don't have the expertise, and it will loop in an additional agency. So I think everyone is looking for additional work. I think everyone wants to be part of doing great work. So I wouldn't be afraid to ask. um and to be honest, again, like I personally think, Goodway offers great resources in this area. Kind of shameless plug. I sort of wish in my past, agencies that I would have known about a solution or partner like Goodway. So to be honest, we're also trying to build our own brand awareness so that agencies know that there is help out there, because I think I'm realizing that there is not enough awareness that there is, partnership opportunity available. So I think with that, actually, we have a minute left, so we'll kind of leave it at that. But we're very appreciative to everyone who has joined us. We will send a recording out afterward. And again, feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions. I know there are a couple questions we didn't get to in the chat. So thank you again, and we wish you a great RFP season, a restful summer. And again, if you need support, we are here to offer guidance, network with you, help you in any way we can.